Two women who have never faced each other. Two completely opposite philosophies of how tennis should be played. And a first-round draw in Strasbourg that looks routine on paper but contains one of the most fascinating stylistic collisions of the entire clay season. Eala, the aggressive Filipina riding genuine momentum from Rome, walks onto the Patrice Dominguez court to face Oleksandra Oliynykova, a Ukrainian qualifier whose entire existence on the WTA Tour is built on making opponents feel like they are hitting tennis balls into wet sand. This is not a match that will be settled by talent alone. It will be settled by patience, by discipline, and by whichever player refuses to abandon her identity first. Let me set the scene properly. The Internationaux de Strasbourg is a WTA 500 event on outdoor clay, the final European warm-up before Roland Garros. 28 players in the singles draw. Prize money and ranking points that matter deeply for anyone outside the top 20. For Eala, ranked 42 in the world, this tournament represents her fifth clay court event of the season and a chance to build genuine confidence before the second Grand Slam of the year. For Oliynykova, ranked 68, it represents continuation of the most productive stretch of her professional life, a stretch that has seen her rise over 200 ranking positions in barely a year. Neither woman arrived here by accident. Both earned their place through very different kinds of proof. Eala was originally listed as a qualifier for Strasbourg. Then Hailey Baptiste withdrew, and the Filipino star was bumped into the main draw. Some might call that fortune. But look closer and you realize Eala was next in line precisely because of what she accomplished in Rome the previous week. She defeated Magdalena Frech 6-0, 3-6, 6-4. She then beat Olympic silver medalist Wang Xinyu 6-4, 6-3. And she pushed world number 2 Elena Rybakina to competitive scorelines of 6-4, 6-3 before bowing out. That Rome run gave her a 4-3 clay record for the season. Not dominant. Not discouraging either. Honest progress from a player who openly admits she is still building her relationship with the red dirt at the professional level. Oliynykova came through qualifying in Strasbourg by dismantling Ksenia Efremova 6-1, 6-2, and then outplaying former top 30 player Yulia Putintseva 6-4, 6-4. Two clean, businesslike qualifying wins that barely hint at how disorienting her game can actually be once you are standing across the net from her in a best-of-3 set match with something at stake. Here is what makes this matchup so tactically rich. Eala is a shot maker. Her instincts pull her toward offense. She wants to redirect pace, find angles, step inside the baseline, and construct points that end with her dictating terms. On hard courts, this works beautifully because the ball comes through at a speed and height that allows her to time those aggressive swings. On clay, the ball sits up higher and arrives slower, which should theoretically give an aggressive player more time. But it also gives her opponents more time to recover, which means the aggression needs to be sustained over longer rallies rather than deployed in quick bursts. That transition has been the central challenge of Eala's clay season. Now consider what Oliynykova does to opponents. She is a self-described practitioner of the unconventional. Her game is built around high, looping moon balls that land deep, defensive retrievals that extend rallies well beyond the comfort zone of baseline hitters, and a counter-punching instinct that waits for frustration to produce errors rather than seeking to create winners of her own. At the Australian Open in January, she jumped to a 4-love lead against defending champion Madison Keys by simply refusing to let Keys find her timing. The American eventually solved the puzzle, but it took a set and a half and a level of adjustment that most top 10 players would prefer not to be forced into during a first-round match. The critical question for this match becomes, can Eala avoid the trap that Oliynykova sets for every opponent? That trap works like this. Oliynykova serves at an average first serve speed of around 139 km per hour. That is not going to trouble anyone in the top 100. Her first serve percentage sits near 77%, which is high, but her first serve points one hovers around 60%. On paper, her service games look vulnerable. And they can be. But the vulnerability of her serve is the bait. Because once an opponent breaks her early and begins to relax, believing the match is trending toward a comfortable conclusion, Oliynykova does not wilt. She digs in. She extends rallies. She forces her opponent to hit 15, 16, 17 balls per point. She makes the ball float at uncomfortable heights. She waits. And she waits. And eventually the opponent who broke her serve early finds herself tight in her own service games because the physical and mental energy required to hold against Oleynykova's return style is far higher than expected. This is precisely what happened in Rome. Oleynykova beat Petra Marcinko 6-1, 6-3, and then took a 6-1, 3-1 lead against 18th seed Clara Tauson before the Dane retired with a back injury. But even before the retirement, Oleynykova was demolishing Tauson's rhythm. Then Linda Noskova beat Oleynykova 6-1, 6-3 in the third round. What does that tell us? It tells us that when an opponent matches her patience and adds genuine offensive quality from both wings, Oleynykova can be overwhelmed. Noskova did not get frustrated. She played her own game at her own pace and never allowed Oleynykova's tempo to become the baseline tempo of the match. That is the blueprint Eala needs to follow. And the honest question is whether she has the clay court discipline to execute it for an entire match. The encouraging signs from Rome suggest she might. Against Wang Xinyu, Eala demonstrated the ability to construct points methodically rather than simply hunting for winners. Against Rybakina, she competed from the first point to the last without ever looking lost. Her movement on clay has visibly improved. She told the Tennis Channel that she has been finding her footing on the surface and knows she can do well. That quiet confidence, earned through doing rather than hoping, is the kind of psychological foundation that handles awkward opponents better than raw talent alone. But here is the complication. Oleynykova is tall at 5 feet 10 inches and covers the court with long strides that make retrieving difficult shots look effortless. Her wingspan allows her to reach balls that would be clean winners against shorter opponents. And on clay, where the ball bounces higher and slower, her defensive game gains an additional fraction of a second that can be the difference between a passing shot that finds the corner and a passing shot that comes back floating over the net one more time. For Eala to win this match, she will need to do several specific things. First, she must not let the pace of the match slow to Oleynykova's preferred tempo. That means Eala has to take the ball early when possible, step inside the baseline rather than drifting behind it, and use her forehand to change direction sharply enough that even Oleynykova's excellent court coverage cannot rescue every ball. Second, Eala needs to approach the net selectively but firmly. One of the weaknesses in Oleynykova's game is that her high, looping balls, while difficult to attack from the baseline, can be exploitable at the net if the approaching player reads the trajectory correctly and closes quickly. A player who can volley decisively will find that those moon balls become sittable if she is willing to take the ball out of the air. Third, and perhaps most importantly, Eala cannot let the scoreboard confuse her. If she breaks Oleynykova early, she must understand that the match is not won. Oleynykova has proven repeatedly that early breaks against her mean nothing. She is built to absorb punishment and wait for the opponent to fatigue mentally or physically. The other factor worth discussing is the surface itself. Strasbourg's clay plays slightly differently from Rome's. The Foro Italico courts tend to play a touch faster due to their composition and maintenance. Strasbourg's courts, hosted at the Tennis Club de Strasbourg, are traditional European clay that rewards patience and consistency. This marginally favors Oleynykova's approach. But marginally is the key word. The conditions will not be so extreme that a talented, aggressive player cannot impose her will. Eala just needs to understand that imposing her will on this surface requires 30% more effort per point than it would on a hard court. What about the mental picture? Eala arrives in Strasbourg having just competed against the number 2 player in the world and acquitted herself admirably. That kind of experience leaves a residue of confidence. She knows what elite opposition feels like. She knows she belongs in those moments. Oleynykova arrives having qualified with 2 straightforward wins, feeling sharp and unburdened by expectation. She has nothing to prove to anyone. She has already been written off a dozen times in her career and responded by climbing the rankings anyway. That psychological freedom can be dangerous for the favored player because it means Oleynykova will play loose, unafraid of consequences, and completely committed to her unusual brand of tennis. The head-to-head between these two is blank. Zero meetings. That matters because Oleynykova's style is the kind you need to experience before you can fully calibrate against it. Watching film prepares you intellectually, but it does not prepare your timing for how different the ball feels when it arrives with that much topspin and that much height. The first 3 or 4 games of this match will be an adjustment period for Eala. If she adjusts quickly, she will be fine. If she loses 4 or 5 games while trying to figure out the timing, the match could slip away from her before she finds her groove. My assessment is that Eala should win this match, but the margin is narrower than the ranking gap suggests. Eala is ranked 26 spots higher, but Oleynykova's style is a great equalizer against opponents who have not seen it before. The Ukrainian has beaten a top 20 player already this season and has taken sets off multiple top 15 opponents. She is not overawed by reputation or ranking. She walks onto court with her temporary face tattoos, her looping ground strokes, and her unapologetic belief that weirdness can be a weapon. If Eala keeps her head, recognizes early that this match will feel different from anything she has played recently, and commits to the patient version of her aggressive game rather than the impatient version, she should have enough quality to come through. Her movement has improved on clay. Her forehand can hurt anyone when she finds the right ball to unload on, and her competitive spirit, the thing that kept her fighting against Rybakina, will serve her well in the uncomfortable middle section of this match when Oleynyková makes everything feel like you are running in slow motion. But if Eala gets impatient, if she starts pressing for winners 3 or 4 shots too early, if she lets the first double fault or shanked forehand become the beginning of a frustrated sequence, then Oleynyková will eat her alive. Slowly, politely, and with a smile. For viewers who want to follow this match, the Strasbourg Open is broadcast on Tennis Channel in the United States and available through WTA streaming platforms in various international markets. Check your local WTA broadcast listings for specific coverage in your region. The match is scheduled for May 18th on the Patrice Dominguez court. Looking beyond this round, a win for Eala would set up a second-round clash against either 8th seed Marie Bouzkova or fellow Czech Kateřina Siniakova. And deeper in the draw, 2nd seed Ekaterina Alexandrova looms as a potential quarter-final opponent. The path is not easy, but for a player building her clay court identity in real time, each round represents something more than ranking points. It represents accumulated knowledge. It represents proof that the work she and her team have done translates under competitive pressure on this surface. This match between Eala and Oleynyková represents something you rarely get to see so cleanly in professional tennis, a direct collision between two completely irreconcilable ideas about what tennis should look like. Eala believes in creation, in pace and angles and the beauty of a well-struck ball finding its target. Oleynyková believes in destruction, in taking away her opponent's ability to find rhythm, in making the beautiful feel ugly, in winning through disruption rather than construction. One of these philosophies will prevail on the clay of Strasbourg, and the answer will tell us something meaningful about where Eala stands in her development as a complete player. Because this is the kind of opponent that separates players who are merely talented from players who are tactically mature. The talented player hits her way into trouble against Oleynyková. The mature player recognizes the trap, adjusts her expectations, and finds ways to win points that do not appear in any highlight reel but accumulate quietly on the scoreboard until the match is over and the handshake is happening at the net. Eala has the tools. The question is whether she has the patience to use them correctly for 2 full sets on a surface that punishes impatience more ruthlessly than any other in tennis. My belief is that she does, but it will not be pretty.